like to call this meeting to order. Becky, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Edelin? Here. Mr. Castro?
Here.
Ms. Huff? Here. Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Mr. Haggard?
Here. You join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. We love it when we need to get more chairs out, so thanks for being here. Thank you. Just a reminder, please silence your cell phones, your smartwatches, your devices, so we can have no interruptions throughout the meeting. We're going to start with public input. I'd like to read our rules of public input. Members of the public may address the board during the period set aside without submitting an item for the agenda. No action shall be taken during this portion of the meeting on issues raised by employees or the public unless deemed an emergency by the board. Please note that comments are asked to refrain from personal remarks in which an individual is named. Comments are limited to 2 minutes unless extended by the board chair. Critical comments or complaints are processed through the district's complaint procedures. Questions and concerns will be addressed by the board through various venues, including but not limited to the district website and email. First up for public input tonight, we have Mr. Bill Wells. Those for public input, if you would state your name and your address for the record, please.
My name's Bill Wells. I live at 110 Crystal Lake, Covington, Kentucky. Although I don't have any kids in Covington Independent Schools at the time, but my son and grandson has both attended there. I own a 3-family apartment house right across the street from Latonia Elementary, and each one of my tenants have a child in that school.
Awesome.
In the past few years, there has been over 600 new residents built in Covington. Has that been taken into consideration in regards to the possibility of closing one of the elementary schools?
Mm-hmm.
By reducing schools, it will probably increase the number of students per teacher. And I feel in no way that that's going to improve the students' education. We're all here today to improve educational opportunities. I certainly don't feel that closing an elementary school in Covington is going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Next up for public input, we have Dave Meyer. State your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, good evening. My name is David Meyer. I live on Willard Street in Mainstrasse. I saw Chairman Haggard's Facebook post about the school closure and the conversation about school closures. And I saw some of the comments and the discussion that was happening. And I thought that it could benefit actually from a look at some of the census data from 2020 and 2021 that was just published. So I put together a little spreadsheet. I have copies if anyone would like one. But according to the ACS in 2021 data, we have 3,905 students or kids aged between 5 and 14 living within the Covington Independent Public School District boundaries. And we have 1,071 kids aged 15 to 17 living within the district boundaries. A grand total of 4,976 students. Obviously, it's census data, so it's not going to be absolutely perfect. There's a chance that it's an undercount, a chance that it's an overcount. But it's fair to say that we have roughly 5,000 students or 5,000 potential students residing in the boundaries of the school district. So I thought the conversation would benefit from that information. Like I said, I do have, and if anyone would like them, happy to distribute. So thank you guys for having the conversation and making it public.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for those who came for public input. I want everyone to know, and those watching today, we encourage public input. We want to have as much public discussion as possible, so please reach out or attend our meetings to let us know what you think. We're going to start with some district recognition and presentations. First, Miss Edlin is going to recognize our Certified Employee of the Month.
All right. Our certified employee of the month is Miss Jordan Shields. And our nomination states Miss Jordan Shields is one of a kind. Jordan Shields always comes to mind when we think of a person who embodies the definition of an amazing teacher. Her love for her students is evident in everything she does. Every morning you will see not only her current students, but students who have had Miss Shields in the past, stopping by for hugs. They light up just at her presence. They know that she is there for them in and out of the classroom. Miss Shields is a very structured teacher who provides a daily schedule that is both engaging and rigorous. Upon entering her room, you will find all students on task and Miss Shields engaging with them by providing feedback and support. During the school day and outside of school, Miss Shields is concerned about her students' growth. She works tirelessly to create lessons that provide students with appropriate, engaging, and high-level work. She always wants to be the best for her students. She's always reaching out to her PLC, other staff, and administration about how to meet the needs of students. Even veteran teachers appreciate and look up to Jordan Shields. Her character, the way she builds relationships, the effort she puts into teaching, and the support she gives others. These things set her apart as a teacher and a leader. Every school needs a Jordan Shields in their building. We just happen to be blessed with 2 of them. This has to be said because she does nothing without her identical twin who's also in our building and here with us today. Our building is a better place because of Miss Jordan Shields. All right. And we've got just a little something to say thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Shields. Next, Mrs. Huff will recognize our Classified Employee of the Month.
April Frazier, would you wave your hand? Hi. Miss April Frazier has been at John G. Carlisle for 10 years in several different capacities. This year, she took on a new role as the administrative assistant. Working with Miss Frazier has made everyone in our building better. She is very organized and takes her job very seriously. She has created systems that make our school run smoothly. She is a fast learner and a problem solver. She is a self-learner and takes a great pride in her job. She collaborates and works tirelessly with the leadership team and the teachers to make our school run effectively. We have received many compliments over the past year about how visitors feel so welcomed and that there is something special about John G. Carlisle. Ms. Frazier is the first face they see and sets the tone for their experience in our building. We feel so blessed to have gained Miss April Frazier as our administrative assistant. And we have a little gift if you'd come up to the podium, please. There you go. Thank you, and we appreciate you so much.
Congratulations. Next, Mr. Simpson is going to recognize our Volunteer of the Month.
So Miss Ruby Johnson, are you here, Miss Johnson? Okay. Miss Ruby Johnson is our Volunteer of the Month. Ruby has been very active in supporting the FRC at John G. Carlisle. Anytime there is a need, Ruby reaches out and offers to help. She and her family attend all nights and all parent nights and are willing to help out in any capacity needed. Miss Johnson always arrives early for setup and stays late for cleanup. She helps with picture days and offers help in other events throughout the year. She and her family are always brainstorming ideas to fundraise for our school. We love having Mrs. Johnson at John G. Carlisle. Her support is definitely appreciated and does not go unnoticed. We are blessed to have her as a John G. Carlisle parent and volunteer.
Congratulations. And next, we have the administration team going to recognize our John G. Carlisle Theater Club.
Hey, I'm Tara Bell, principal at John G. Carlisle. We usually do a team or something of that matter, but we feel like our CLC is very important and things that happen in the CLC should be noticed. So tonight we're recognizing the John G. Carlisle Theater Club. The John G. Carlisle Theater Club is being recognized for their hard work and production of a play. The Theater Club is part of the John G. Carlisle CLC. It's comprised of fourth grade students. During the Theater Club session, students learned the elements of theater. They spent time learning about writing, scripting, the elements of sound, acting, stage, set design, and costuming. The Theater Club used what they learned about the elements of theater to write their own original play. During their time creating the play, the members learned to collaborate and be true teammates. The students practiced from September to December and performed their play for parents and students in December. Everyone who saw the play was excited about what the students had created, and the students themselves felt great accomplishment after performing the play. Some students have found their own passion and want to write plays of their own in the future. We are so proud of these students and their hard work and creativity. Students receiving recognition for their collaboration of writing and producing a play are Melvin Aguilar Oliva, Cordell Burton, Michaela Carter, Marvin Escobar Coronado, Jawan Custis, Charlie Evans, Tamaya Hayes, Janira Hill, Aaliyah Horn, Noel Jackson, Kamarly Johnson, Corey Leppert, Micah Lewis, Kaniko Palmer, Guillermo Perez, Lionel Portillo, Gomez, Simone Scott, Eric Stewart, Samaya Stewart, Shyla Tomas Perez, Cameron Toyer, Javari Warren, Janaya Williams, and Donovan Zaniga Ramirez.
Well, I think please pass along our congratulations and encouragement. I think that's very exciting. So thank you for letting us know about that.
Let us know when the next play comes.
That's right. That is all for district recognition and presentations. We have our informational agenda, which will start with Ms. Bell and the John G. Carlisle annual update.
Okay, so first up is what are we most proud of at John G. Carlisle? And so I want to say our staff, but it's really our culture and our climate. When you come into our building, you're going to hear teachers say this year, I love my team. I love showing love to my students. They're going to be taking individual students' needs into what they're doing, that they're going to be collaborating about that. I feel so supported and everyone is so helpful. So when we think about these things, at the beginning of the year, we talked about speaking life to one another and speaking life to our students. We spent a lot of time on that during professional development. What does that look like in our building? How do we support students when there's high expectations? How do we support each other when there's high expectations for us? And so we talked about speaking life to one another. And what that has created in our building are shared expectations, commitment, support, and collaboration among all staff. Our building has a family feel. It's something that we've wanted for a really long time, and we feel like we have achieved that. We're all in it together. Just the other day, there was a new assistant in the building walking down the hall, and she said, I just love it here. I can go to anybody and they'll help me. So it's just something we're really excited about. There's a shared love and support for students, commitment to learning and implementing processes academically, behaviorally, for social and emotional needs as well, and making changes that are best for students. Everybody knows that we're going to put students first. High expectations for one another and students, and then there's collaboration among all staff. Everyone has a part to play. What are our top 3 areas of growth? We do have a number of new teachers this year, so we put unit planning back on our list. We have a number of seasoned teachers who are there to help. Myself and the coach and Ms. Duty are there to help as well. Higher level questioning and student engagement are in that as well. And something we focused on over the past few years is really reducing novice in our building. So we spend a lot of time during our analysis sessions, whether it be formative or summative assessments, talking about our students who are novice and how are we going to move them. We also look at what students we want to move to proficient, but we're really looking to narrow that gap in our building. The John G. 30-second pitch. We've gotten a lot of feedback on this year, and this probably isn't what I would say. It would be more conversational. But we have exactly what we talked about with Miss April Frazier. We've gotten lots of compliments from people who have interviewed, from parents who've come in to move their kids from another school to John G. Carlisle, just about the feel in the building. So when we created this, this is what we wanted to do. So the staff at John G. Carlisle are dedicated to ensuring that all students are successful. We have systems that support students academically, emotionally, socially, and socially. This is evidenced by the comments of volunteers, community members, families, and district staff who enter our building. We receive many compliments on the way our students carry themselves and the love that can be felt throughout the building by administration, staff, and students. Many who enter state that they love their time and experience at John G. Carlisle. Our staff take pride in ensuring that we teach the whole child and create an environment where learning is fun and rigorous. We value each individual student and thrive on seeing each student reach their full potential. We consistently review data to ensure students are growing academically, socially, and emotionally, and celebrate with them when they reach their goals. Here at John G., we're in the business of creating an environment of respect, rapport, and high expectations that allow every student to reach their full potential. It is our belief that parents are partners with us in creating an environment where we help each student reach their goals and dreams. We want to partner with you to help our students be all that they dream. How do we promote ourselves in the community? We partner with lots of people. We have Adopt a Class in our building. When I wrote this, not every class was adopted, but as of yesterday, every single class is adopted. We had 2 more to get, so that's great. We have Lunch Buddies. For the past 5 years, we've partnered with Scripps Howard, with WCPO and Scholastic to give kids 5 free books about 3 times a year, this year 2 times. I think Glen Swing's also doing that. We do arts education through the Carnegie. We have opportunities for students with Covington Fire and Police. We have policemen that stop by very often and visit our students in the classroom. We've started a High Five Friday, and so we have different people coming into the building and greeting our students in the hallways with music and those kinds of things. It's a new favorite thing in the building. There's lots of partnerships through the CLC, but I really want to talk about the Art Equals program because we just had a family night last week and they came out and they did an activity with our parents. We let our kids go and watch a movie with some of our CLC staff, and then she did art with our parents and they sat together. It wasn't a family together, it was groups of different parents together working on art. And then they found pictures within their art and got up and presented a story that they wrote. And it was just really neat. They were excited about it. They had ideas of other things we can do. I think they really enjoyed working together as families in our building. So it's just another way our building, I feel like, is becoming a family and everybody's on board. How do you support the whole child? I feel like our teachers and leadership team, we're just a building who wants to look at every part of the child. So we have a lot of things in place. Second step for social and emotional learning, mindfulness minutes every morning that we started last year. Our counselor reads a mindfulness minute. So if you walk in a classroom, you're going to see students doing what she's asking them to do, giving them ways to reduce anxiety throughout the day. You may even see us kidding her in the office every once in a while because we like to have fun in our building as well and try to make her laugh, but she keeps it stoic. SEL, we have a SEL special now for students. We noticed that students needed more of that in our building. So this year we took our technology special and we split it. So part of that is technology and part of it they get problem solving and those kinds of things, some SEL lessons. And the counselor is actually working with that teacher to create those. Counselor referrals to Northkey and MEBS. We have trauma-informed practices in our building. We really take that to heart with our SST team and how we deal with every individual student. We look at what they're going through and what's the best plan to support that student, not just how are we going to deal with everybody. Focus groups with the counselor that she's created based on specific needs of groups of students that she's meeting with. We do Students of the Week for every classroom, and they come down and they get awards and their picture taken. We have Spirit Weeks. We're doing restorative practices in the building, so not just handing out a consequence when something happens, but working through those problems with students, and our SST does that. We have a number of people working on that in the building to ensure that students are able to get along later and that problem doesn't continue. We have problem-solving meetings where teachers come together who maybe share students and special ed teachers. The students having this problem, how can we help them? And we sit down and we look at all the things and get more input than just one person or just myself and a teacher, or Miss Duty and a teacher. And I give credit to Ms. Judy for starting the problem-solving meetings. Data analysis meetings for academics and SST. So we have the MTSS processes in place. We are looking at kids for academics, their behavior, emotional, and social issues as well. Safe and civil schools. We're really excited about what we've done with Safe and Civil Schools. Ms. Judy and I came in together 6 years ago, and our building has changed tremendously. Our behavior referrals have decreased by 86% since the implementation of Safe and Civil Schools. Our out-of-school suspensions have decreased by 98%. We really try not to suspend unless absolutely necessary. It's just not our philosophy to do that. And the number of students receiving referrals has decreased by 64%. And we give credit to the work we've done with Safe and Civil Schools. Teachers have more resources. We're more collaborative in our building. We pay more attention to the trauma that students may come in with and how are we going to deal with that in our building. We track data and make changes. We look at our whole school culture. How can we change the school culture? Not just what's going on with students, but are there things that we as staff can do as well? And then we also look at data for individual students in the student support team. For PLCs and collaboration, all teachers in our building are on a PLC. They're either on their grade level team or they're in a vertical team, depending on which grade they teach. When they meet in those PLCs, they're going to be creating lesson plans together. They're going to analyze student work. They're going to analyze formative and summative data, and then they're going to collaborate to rewrite maybe questions or those kinds of things that they're maybe struggling with and they want help from their team. And then you ask how the work is monitored. It's because in most of those meetings, we're a part of them. So if we're analyzing data, we're there. We're doing it with them. If we are having a equivalency day and teachers are working on lesson plans, we're not in our offices. We have assigned ourselves to different teams and we're working alongside of them. So if they're struggling with it, then we're helping them with that as well. If we're giving feedback on lesson plans, I may give some to some people through Google Docs, but then there may be, I'm in there and I'm giving feedback and I'm like, oh, this would be better in person. And I'm going to sit and I'm going to help you do it. Just yesterday, there was somebody I was helping and I said, okay. And so we did some things together and then I added some more for her. We talked about some things and I said, I'll model it for you. So we're trying to meet each teacher's needs based on that. So that's how we're tracking that. We're doing it alongside of them. Teacher retention. Last year, we just really wanted to add to what we're doing for teacher retention. So we implemented a night where every teacher gets an award. And so if you could see that picture, and I actually will pass some pictures around for you. We spray painted fruit gold. It was supposed to be funny as well. They're tired of hearing from me and Miss Judy, I'm sure. So we got some people from the community to MC it. Everyone got an award. It looked like this, and they were very personalized. So I'll pass those around. We catered a dinner. It was just because we wanted to create that family atmosphere in our building, and it's something that we're going to continue. They loved it. We had fun together. There was music. People dressed up. We didn't think they would do that. It was Hawaiian theme, and then our teachers started coming in dressed up. So we've just embraced the importance of knowing our teachers and seeing our teachers as individuals in our building. We want to create a staff, a school, where the staff feel as if they're part of something bigger than themselves. That means that they have to trust us. They have to know where to go to get help, where to receive support. They have to feel heard. They have to know their team, their administrators, and their staff are in it with them. Teachers have played a role in this. We reached out to some teachers last summer and we said, hey, you're really good at helping, just bring life to our school. So we had summer outings. We went bowling together. And there's a way to do that and be a principal and lead the school and still cooperate in that with your staff. So we did some fun outings with our staff. We had a Christmas party that they created. They've done birthday gifts for teachers. We have luncheon. So we're doing those kinds of things. And then, like I said, we're creating these traditions like this. We also gave them journals at the beginning of the year and said, each week, write 2 positive things that have happened in your week. We also, at the beginning of the year, felt that teachers may need wellness, some help with wellness in our building. So we created a gift for them, and I'll pass this around. They got a coffee mug with our school on it. with our school mascot on it. They got a book called Alpha Breaths. When we started doing trauma training in the building, many times in our first few years, we would sit down with kids and walk them through breathing things. We gave this to teachers so that they could read it to their kids, help their students, but also for themselves. We wrote them a note, gave them some chapstick and some different things to help them throughout the year. Also, they're they are in PLCs. They're provided with mentors and team leads. We had at the beginning of the year district training that they do for new teachers, but we also did one in our own building. I think we had 2 of those at the beginning. We've done peer observations with a number of our new teachers where we go with them into a classroom and help them see what's going on in that classroom, and we talk about that so that they can grow in their teaching as well. And then the planning days that have been given to us throughout the district have been great in teacher retention. And then we also provide coaching, feedback, and modeling. And like I said, we sit right with them and do that with them. Some of the things that staff are saying, it's a family atmosphere, the support, everyone is helpful. I love my team. Everybody truly cares about the kids and wants what's best for them. John G is special. We've heard that from people outside, people inside. I love it here. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I would trust you with my life, or some things that have been said to Miss Duty and I. And so I just think we're just creating that atmosphere of trust. And that's been really important to Miss Duty and I. And so we're just really excited to see that coming through. And that's why it's showing in the presentation. Professional development. It was more individualized this year. Of course, the district offered individualized professional development. There was a survey that went out and teachers could choose during the summer. We also use some of that in our building. Some teachers had been asking for specific things that we use in our building. So we created one of our days that we did inside the building. They could choose and go to different people for the training that they needed. And we had teacher leaders help with that. So I think there were 3 leadership members doing that, and then the rest were teachers creating those workshops. And then the equivalency days have been great, just because teachers are able to sit with us and get that time to plan as well. And then what we feel is very valuable, and it's valued by our teachers, is the job embedded professional development. That's when we look at work. We sit together and we do lesson plans in the building. We're analyzing assessment data. And that's when you really see the lights start to go on with teachers in those meetings. You know, this teacher's doing this, and oh, maybe I should try that in my classroom. There are tears in those meetings. We have teachers who get really excited that kids are doing well, or if a kid's struggling. And so it's just become a part of growing one another within our building. So we find that to be very helpful in our building. Curriculum, all teachers are participating and collaborating on grade level or vertical teams, like I said before. Teachers are following the district curriculum maps. They're developing lesson plans based on those documents. They're provided with feedback, which I've already mentioned. They're completing all assessments in Mastery Connect. They're completing flashbacks there as well. They meet with us to do their analysis sessions, and then I've talked about how we monitor all of that as well. And then technology. We're 1-to-1 in each classroom. Students in K through 3 have iPads. Students in 4th and 5th have Chromebooks. Teachers are incorporating technology into the classroom. We use Mastery Connect for assessments and flashbacks. We use Google Classroom. We have Extra Math. We have Lexia, Edusary that teachers can use to help plan their lessons, and then all the Savvis materials that we've bought as a district for ELA Science, Math, and Social Studies are used in our building as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Mrs. Bell. We'll open the floor for questions. Mrs. Huff?
Yeah, thank you. Other staff members, I hear you talk about teachers, teachers,
Yeah.
teachers, but we also have other staff members in our building that are so important. How do you embrace them and make them feel important?
So I think that was something, actually, Ms. Frazier and I were just talking about it today, that sometimes in buildings you have a gap between instructional assistants and teachers. And we were just talking about how we don't feel like that exists in our building. Ms. Hood is here as well anymore. The gifts that we give to our staff or to our whole staff, our cafeteria staff, our custodians. So all of those things are given to everyone, not just to our teachers. When we did the Christmas party and most of our staff were there, you would see everyone mingling together. There's not a separation. That was one of my favorite things. I think Miss Duty and I were talking on the phone that night that, hey, our staff is not cliquey. Like everyone's talking to everyone, grade level across grade level, job across job. And so I think it's just the way we treat people. I think that our philosophy has been, you have to know your teachers, you have to know your staff, you have to know what's going on with them. I don't need to get in your business, but if you have something hard going on and I don't know that, I can't help you as your administrator. And so we have an open door policy, and I think it's taken a really long time to get there for people to realize that we really mean it. We're here for you as a teacher for our students, because when you're at your best for our students, and everyone in our building's a teacher. You'll see custodians helping students. You'll see the FRC coordinator helping students. So I feel like it's really starting to feel that way.
And if I can just add, the event that we did, like the
Miss
luau-
Judy, please come up to the podium.
I apologize. The event that we did, the luau, that was for all of our teachers and staff. So when we say teachers, we're not just talking about certified teachers. We're talking about every person in our building. We treat every individual in our building as an educator. Another thing is for example, we have a check-in, check-out system this year that's been extremely successful through student support, where students were identified in a preventative way versus a reactive way. So to get into that, you didn't have to have a number of office referrals. It was just something where last year we noticed that you just needed to develop a relationship with somebody. Mr. Kevin Jackson is one of our check-in, check-out people. We go and ask other custodians to be a check-in, check-out person. So when Ms. Bell was referring to teachers, and is it okay if I speak for
Yes,
you?
go right ahead. We do everything
She's
together.
not
So
referring to a certified staff member in the state of Kentucky. She's referring to every adult that's in our building. We consider them teachers.
you may see Miss Duty serving lunch in the cafeteria. You may
I
see
do have
me.
some hairnet
You may
pictures
see me
for-
mopping up the floor if I need to. So
That's what we do.
Yeah.
We when we're short staffed, I've gone in and served, and the kids love it, and they embrace me. They got me a shirt that says nutritional services, and so my nice shirts don't get ruined. But yes, I believe when she says teachers that she's referring to all of our
Yeah.
adults.
Everybody needs to be heard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Simpson.
I want to say it's the things that you're doing sound really great, and especially I want to take a little step back to the theater program. Definitely let us know about that. I've written a couple of plays myself. I was in the school and at Holmes back in the day. We did a couple of plays, and so I love it. I think it helps broaden individuals' minds and things that they can do, and help them think in class as well. I also like what you're doing with the CLCs and trying to make it kind of like a community learning experience, because I think community is the maybe 50% of the learning experience for our kids. So great work.
Mr. Gastright.
Thank you. Really appreciate the passion you bring. I mean, I love when you're speeding up to try to get through all the material, because I can tell that you care about it, and it's really part of kind of the magic you're creating in your building. So I appreciate that. I know you talked about teacher retention, and you had a list of things that you're doing in the building. And for us, that's one of our top issues that we try to focus on every meeting, is just what are we doing to make sure our teachers feel supported, and that they know how important they are, not only to our kids' success, but our district's success. And so I'm wondering, when you look at all those things, are there any ways that you evaluate whether you're being successful? Because we know that there are, life intervenes in people's plans. It's always, so there are reasons, there are great reasons our teachers are not able to stay with us to the next year. But are there things that you feel like you're doing, like if you had to pick one thing that you feel like has been the most successful, or if there's a way you measure the success of the things you are doing, it'd be great to hear about.
I think we did a survey in October to see how teachers were feeling in our building. But I think what we're really good at, it's not on paper, but we talk to staff. We ask What are you happy with? What do we need to work on? How are we doing in this area? So getting that real-time feedback. I would say in the past, I don't know that people were always honest with us, but I would say I feel like people are honest with us. We kept every leader but one last year as our team leads. And if there's a problem in the building, they'll come to my office and say, hey, we got a problem. We need to fix it. How can we fix it? And we get on board with that. And so I think we've developed now that trust between us and our staff to come to us. Instructional assistants will come to me. Cafeteria managers will come to me. So
Yeah, I think that there's quantitative data and qualitative data anytime that you look at anything. And, I taught math at the middle and high school, so I'm a big numbers girl. But I think Ms. Bell's correct in saying that it's more about the qualitative at this point. I think that we've been saying for 5 years that we have an open door policy. And, I didn't learn about like what administrators say about when you step into this role, you're truly on an island until I did it. I was like, what are they talking about? And it's the truth. You kind of like get into this island and it's really hard to create that bridge of trust because you can say it all you want, but you have to live it and breathe it. And I think that Ms. Bell and I have done a great job of like really creating that bridge now where if someone's suffering or struggling personally, they come to us. And that's happened multiple times this year. Multiple times I've heard Ms. Bell offer like to donate sick days to teachers who are struggling. We've had where they've reached out. I've had teachers come in my office and just collapse in my arms crying because of things that they're going through personally. And so that stuff, you're not going to see quantitative data. And here's my data. I have goosebumps. That's real. That's real. And so I feel like we're creating a presence where not only can they depend on us, they can depend on each other.
Yeah.
And I think that we've developed a system now where like even when they may come to us where they have a struggle professionally, that we're coaching them and encouraging them to speak with each other, to develop that professional courtesy, to resolve some conflict and problems. And I think that that's happening at John G. And I would encourage you guys to stop in and see it because it's really a great place to be.
No, I really appreciate you sharing some of those stories because I feel like we certainly want to make sure that from I'd say a district level, that the teachers feel supported and appreciated.
Mhm.
And I think that, every school that presents, you can tell the creativity that goes into that effort, right? And it is about what's happening inside that building. We want to make sure that there's never the district is not doing something it could be to support that effort because we know we want teachers who come, like we want them to be supported so they're coming back year and year. They're learning, they already know everything we're doing in the building. They've gone through our great professional development. We want to keep them and know that they want to be kept. So thank you. Nothing further.
Ms. Edlin.
I just want to say thank you. It's so exciting to see folks come in and be so enthusiastic about the work that you're doing. And I can tell you all are being so intentional with your teacher retention. I loved seeing the photos of the Hawaiian party and, hearing about the different things that you all are doing to pay attention to your teachers' needs. I did have one question. Are there any challenges that you all are currently facing that we could support you with in any way?
I mean, I think we're still short teachers, We've been creative in the building and taking care of that. We have good teachers taking care of that, but we're still, the pool is not as big as it used to be. And so I don't know how you help with that, but I think that's one struggle that we have that I think people in the district have helped us with. I've called and said, hey, I've got a creative, and they help us. They do a great job with that. So I think just letting them continue to do that when we ask for help. Yeah.
Thank you. No further questions.
You can tell us to raise pay. You can do that. You can do that right now. So, no. Well, all those questions. Thank you both very much. We do truly appreciate your leadership at John G. Thanks so much. If you don't want to stay for the rest of our business meeting today, feel free to head to the exit door. But we have lots of other exciting things to talk about. I believe next item on the agenda is our memorandum of understanding with the Boys and Girls Club. I think Mr. Kippenbrock's here to answer some questions.
So
This is an item that I brought to the board at the request of Mr. Magner at the high school. There's a special education class at the high school that would like to use the pool at the Boys and Girls Club. So there are SBDM allocated funds. There's no additional cost request from the board, but all formal MOUs we ask the board to look at and approve. Marianne has taken a look at this. Marianne Stewart drafted and approved. So whenever this could get approved, I know they would like to start using it as soon as possible. But that's, of course, at your discretion if you would be willing to move it to an action item or you want to wait till the second February.
Any questions for Mr. Kippenbrock? Mr. Simpson?
I took a look. For one thing, I love this. I think it's a great partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. It's a great use of their facility. I'm a product of the Boys and Girls Club, so I love it. Just a real minor question with the MOU. It has it drafted that the kitten, it's directed to the organization Boys and Girls Club in Greater Cincinnati, but the person that's signing it is the director of the Kitten County Club. And I just know that generally it needs to be, I think it needs to be the director of the Boys and Girls Club to sign the MOU. And that's something that just in my experience, it usually would be them and not the director of the club if it's written to the Boys and Girls Club as a whole.
I don't disagree.
Okay.
So when I review this draft, it looks like the identity of Miss Jadwin is in two different ways. So if the board was wanting to approve this tonight, you can make a motion just to amend to make sure that the proper person is identified. If we want to try and expedite that, and that's not a problem. Or as Mr. Kimbrough had referenced previously, it can be set on the next as a actionable item for the next meeting. But I don't think that I agree we should have the correct party identified who's signing and executing. But I think that can be determined pretty easily.
Okay. Any other questions? Mrs.
Go ahead.
Huff? Mrs. Huff?
How does anybody feel about moving it to an action item, or would you prefer to wait for a consent?
I mean, you know how I feel about moving things to action items in the same meeting, but I'm fine with it if that's what needs to be done. I'm curious just because I'm going to use my point of privilege because Coach Winkler's here. We use the Boys and Girls Club for the swim team. Is that correct, Coach Winkler? Because I've never seen an MOU before for the swim team to use.
We do an MOU every year with
Okay.
the Boys Club, and Boys and Girls Club Greater Cincinnati is the umbrella. Mine is always signed by the director because the director is ultimately in charge of that facility. But it is written out of the main office in Cincinnati. So we've been doing this for, I've been coaching 14 years, and all of my every year is signed by the director. If that helps. Was that your question?
It is, and that's just my question. Like, why are we seeing this one and we're not seeing that one? I'm just the process. Right.
I think
that
we
was-
I don't think mine comes to you because it's just a yearly athletic. I don't know. That's beyond my pay grade.
I just wanted to make sure I was correct that we were using that facility for
We
the
are, and
swim
that
team.
first figure you see has already been paid as part of it.
Okay.
And
Second.
I think that this is probably the first time it's been presented to the board,
Okay.
but probably moving forward, it will be each and every time. And I think that perhaps Megan Jadwin is the correct person. It's just when we put Kenton behind her name, it caused confusion as it relates to Greater Cincinnati.
Sure.
Okay. Boys and Girls Club.
Mr. Gastray, did you have a question?
I guess I just wanted to ask, I know you've said it was okay. You'd like for us to bring it to an action item, but it would be okay if we didn't.
The only downside is it's longer that the kids don't get to use it.
Okay.
But certainly it's the board's call discretion whether they want to move that up.
Well, I'd be in support of moving it up if it's going to impact.
I think, well, yes, that's fine. We need these things in a timely manner then, if you want the board to act, get us in a timely manner and we'll act. I think it's fine. We can move it with everything we've talked about, right? All of us want this to happen. let's just do everything we just talked about. Make sure the right people are signing it, making sure we're seeing it regularly. So if Mrs. Huff or somebody else would like to make that motion. But Miss Evelyn, you have a question?
Yes, and this might be for Ms. Winkler. As to, I guess, is the season just from January through, what is this, May?
What season?
Is the season, swim season just January through May?
No, the high school swim season is October through February. We just finished.
Okay.
How'd you do in regionals?
My kids did very well. It's hard to compete in Northern Kentucky
It
with
is.
club teams, but my kids all did personal best times. So when we swim, that's our goal, is to do personal best times.
Okay. Would you foresee the use of these facilities following the state at all for additional practices? Or,
We've been told it may be closing.
It's official, so can I freely say that?
Yeah, it's on our info, but.
I got a phone call this week from the director of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Cincinnati. They will be filling in their swimming pool come May.
okay. All right. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate your answers.
Happy to entertain that
Change
motion.
things.
Yeah.
Okay, since time is of an essence, I propose to move the Boys and Girls Club Memorandum of Understanding to an action item.
And I will second that motion.
Becky, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Huff,
Yes.
Ms. Evelyn,
Yes.
Mr. Gastright,
Yes.
Mr. Simpson,
Yes.
Mr. Haggard.
Yes.
So now I'm going to move to approve the Boys and Girls Club Memorandum of Understanding for approval.
Second.
Can we?
I'm just going to interject. Ms. Huff will move to approve the memorandum of understanding after confirmation of the
Yeah, what she
point of
said.
contacts. That's the motion.
Awesome. We have a
Second.
second. Becky, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Huff,
Yes.
Ms. Evelyn,
Yes.
Mr. Gastright,
Yes.
Mr. Simpson,
Yes.
Mr. Haggard.
Yes.
Some conversations need to be had with the city about getting us a pool.
It was on the agenda, well, came up with the last team foundation. So
Okay.
There's already some discussion.
Okay.
Awesome. Next, we have Director Foes with us for our district nurse proposal.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Nice to see you for a non-health update.
Exactly.
So tonight I bring to you the proposal for a district nurse. We recently had a vacancy in our department of our district health assistant. And with that, we began to problem solve. Is this the best way for us to move forward, is to refill that position exactly as is? Or should we look at restructuring the health services department in a way that would allow for better support of our staff, better implementation of our services, and improved processes through our department? So we followed the guidance of a couple other local districts who are starting to look into a similar distribution of their task into a district nurse. And you can see how I wrote that up. I also included a job description in the proposal of the district nurse. This position would single-handedly fill several missing roles within our department. Our health assistant role, our administrative assistant role that I have unfortunately not had for the last 8 years. And also it would be a built-in substitute nurse, which we are also lacking substitute nurses right now. We are down to 2. So I bring this proposal to you. One thing that I do want to point out, I had answered some questions throughout the week about, is this the best practice? With moving from a health assistant to a nurse, we of course get specialized education, specialized experience, and credentials through the state. That brings a large benefit to the district, and it reduces so many barriers. There's not additional training needed. There is no concern that a district nurse would be able to perform procedures if they're covering a school for students. And it increases the safety overall as well. Another thing that I do want to point out is that this position does have to be a registered nurse in order to do some of the tasks that we need them to do, and delegating and training. And with that, we are able to put this under the RN BSN exempt category, which is a certified employee. I did check in with Director Birchie to make sure that I was making a responsible proposal. And I do just want to be very clear that because we have a vacancy in our department already, 37,000 of the salary that's in this proposal is already in our budget. So it makes that seem like a lot less of an ask when we realize that a lot of this money is already available to us. So I bring that to you, and I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Awesome. Thank you. We have questions for Director Foey. Mr. Simpson.
I thought you answered most of the questions that I sent for this proposal. I thought it was a great proposal as is. Generally, when I kind of grew up in a medical family, and so I understand the need for this, and I think it's great. I think your answers just further exemplified why this is needed. So thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Edlin.
Hi there. I was just curious as to what your recruitment efforts will look like for this new position.
We do plan to recruit and interview both internally and externally. In the past, we have actually used Indeed very successfully. So we would more than likely put it there as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Gastrick.
Is time of the essence on this, or?
It's always better, but I'm okay either way.
Go ahead and do it. Just one quick question. The funds for this position come out of the general fund. Is
General
that correct?
fund, yes.
Okay. Awesome. Happy to entertain that motion.
Yeah. I move to move this item to an action item.
Yes.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great.
I make a motion to approve I turned the page on it, sorry. The district nurse proposal.
I second.
Awesome. Becky, you call roll, please.
Mr. Gastright?
Yes.
Ms. Huff? Yes. Ms. Edlin?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Ivers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Foey. Next, Mr. Grind is here to talk to us about our 23-24 SBDM allocations for schools.
Hello, everybody. Every year, 3 times, we're going to bring a SBDM allocation to you. The first time by law, we have to get it to the schools by March 1st as a tentative allocation. Then we have to give them a allocation officially by May 1st. And so I'll come back to you in April with a similar document. We'll add some more information. And then we come back even after school starts. And if a school has more students, then we are required to make some adjustments. This was the first year in a while where we actually had to move a teacher from one school because they had less enrollment than we expected to a school where we had more enrollment than expected. So you hate to do that. That's one of the last things we want to do. You go through parent conference days and all your opening day stuff. So we really have stayed away from that as much as possible. But this was a unique year, and so we deal with it. The first page in the document is just kind of give you a picture of enrollment. So basically at the beginning of the year, when you add up those totals for each school, there's about 333,300 kids that were in these schools at the beginning of the year. Currently, we have about 3,272. Some of that difference could be that some of those kids are now in the alternative programs. They do not get an SBDM allocation, so we don't give TLC and the adult high school an allocation. We don't give BIGS an allocation for staff. We work on those separately. Those aren't required by the state. So this gives you an idea. And so when I come back in May or in April, I'll give you one more look at enrollment. Our enrollment can change from year to year. I think back one of the craziest years, we had 650 kids, or 450 kids at 6 districts at Christmas time. That same year, at the end of the year, they finished with 525. So they went up 75 kids from Christmas till the end of the year. So it was a crazy year. We've had things like that'll happen. So that's why this is as much as a tentative look at this. From a staffing standpoint, we have 3 new board members, or two new board members to kind of help you. We have certified staff, we have classified staff. Certified are your administrators, your anybody that needs to, psychologists, teachers, special education teachers. Then you also have classified staff that are anything from teacher aides, to bus drivers, to secretaries, administrative assistants. Nurses are kind of in the middle because they're certified. They're not certified, but they're degreed. So we get some mixes in that mix. That's nothing to worry about. That though, typically your allocation is dealing with regular ed. How many teachers, K through 5, do we expect to need at this school? Doesn't include special ed. Just as how many K to 5 teachers, how many 6 through 9 or 6 through 8 teachers, and then how many 9 through 12 teachers, and then how many administratives. And so as you look at the one pager there, or the actual allocation document, it just kind of says, here's what an elementary, how we come up with the elementary staff. So it lists your certified support staff, principal, assistant principal, additional administrators, gets into your regular ed teachers. Every school has to have a media librarian, so that's there, a media specialist, and then classified support staff. Besides that, if you look at the bottom of that page, you see all the people that are outside the allocation. So school nurses are outside the allocation, all our special education teachers. And I could read the list to you, but I won't. So there's a large population in the allocation, but there's also a large population out of the allocation. Funding. SBDM allocated positions are all general fund positions. In the district, we have general fund positions that are paid out of the district general fund. And then we have Fund 2 positions, which are either federal grants or state grants or local grants. An example of a local grant would maybe be the 21st Century Group, or Covington Partners, because they have some local monies that help support their programs, besides having federal monies that also support their programs. So there's a variety of ways you are a Fund 2 position. That's a lot of information. What I would suggest is if you have any questions, I can give you a one-on-one. I can meet with you. I did that with Tom this week. Don't be afraid to reach out if you have any questions as you get into it. But again, this is a tentative one. We'll look at it. You'll pretty much leave this alone for this one. But if we do an adjustment with schools or something like that, then we would come back and we'd be doing something a little bit different. It'll change some as we move into May, and then we'll go through the summer and finalize it then. Any questions?
No, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Grine?
I will send you some via email.
No problem. Thank you.
Awesome. Mr. Gasright, anything? Can this go on the consent agenda, Mr. Grine, for next? Do we have to approve
No,
it, or it's just informational?
I think it does go on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
Without objection, it'll be on the consent agenda for next meeting. Thank you.
Before we get into that next one.
All right, we are going to take a 2-minute break.
bring us to task.
Awesome. All right. We're going to come back to order, please. Well, I'm not sure where it went, but at the discretion of the chair, we do have additional public input this time. If you'd please state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Michael Brosmore, 118 Trevor Street, Covington, Kentucky. Sorry I was late, but I have a 17-year-old granddaughter that I have custody of, and she comes first.
Absolutely.
Okay, I understand that the school closing, and to me, there's a couple things I'd like to address if that's all right.
Sure.
The school closing, why would you have a 70 or 80% capacity and then want to close the school? The more labor you put on these teachers, the more students. Smaller class size always works, always has, always will. Don't overload the teachers. Okay, that being said, I keep hearing about these kids aren't coming out of school. They're not ready for college. They're not ready for work. Here, pass that around. I'm a proud grandpa. How are you, sir? My granddaughter had a rough childhood. She went from foster home to families to foster home. I went and picked her up at Homeward Bound. She was going to be one of the statistics. You can change the administration as much as you want. You have to change the families. My daughter went from Scott High School to Dixie High School to Newport High School to Campbell County High School, all through Foster's. Wasn't doing well. Now she's straight A's. It's the families that cause that. It's not the administration. She has somebody that tells her that they love her. She has somebody that tells them, you can succeed. You can get way past where you're at. She's not going to be a statistic. She's getting offers from all over the country because of Holmes High School, because of the administration, and because her grandfather is on her butt and will not accept anything but excellence. I hope you guys don't close this school and overload the teachers. I really do. And as for the high school, if you can work with the parents to work with the children, that's where it's at. You can throw money at it all day long, but it's got to come from home first. It really does. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I will pause here because just before we go into this discussion about possible elementary school consolidation, I will offer the microphone to anyone else who did want to speak to public input but was not here to sign up. All right, we'll start with a presentation with Mr. Kippenbrock.
We start by acknowledging that this is a difficult topic. This is a difficult subject. Been unfortunate enough to be here through other school closures in the past. It was difficult then. I'd also like to ask folks not to shoot the messenger. I am tasked, because I oversee facilities and pupil personnel, two of the departments, with presenting tonight. But this is the recommendation of all 9 cabinet members and the superintendent. It is rare that the 9 of us agree on anything. We can't agree on lunch, what time to have it. We have some very passionate discussions at times, but I think it's important for both the public and the board to understand that this isn't a Ken Kippenbrock plan. This is the recommendation of the entire cabinet, and very much so with students in mind as a result of years of discussion. So I guess I would just like to preface it with that. So with that, Becky, if you could go to the first slide. Part of the duties of the DPP office is to examine membership and average daily attendance. As you know, a large and substantial portion of our funding to keep lights on, to keep teachers in building, et cetera, is from that SEEK formula out of CARA. So we're always monitoring. It's part of the job to monitor both membership and attendance. So hanging down there in that office, we keep 40 years worth of at-a-glance data. Next slide, please. We broke it down to make it large enough for folks to be able to see, but as you can see, we are at the lowest point in 40 years. The reason first month and 10th month membership are displayed is because we tend to lose at least some students between the first and 10th month. So that's why those two columns are maintained. It's one of the things we monitor. Our projection for this year is that we will be funded on about 3,105 students district-wide. We have a high degree of confidence in that number. And next year, we're planning on 3,032. Next slide, please. This kind of shows you some of the highs and lows through that 40 years to isolate it for you and where we're forecasted at this point. Next slide, please. One of the things we do is we look at the building square footage, the KDE recommended capacity, and our current membership at each building. District-wide in our elementary schools, we're operating at 71% capacity today. Non-resident, those are students who do not reside in Covington School District boundaries that are coming in currently. The next column that says proposed membership, if we were to consolidate to 4 elementary schools, shows what the capacity of each building would be. As you can note, the new district-wide elementary overall capacity would be about 88%. If we are lucky enough to have an increase in membership at the elementary level at even 2% a year, you can see that we have years worth of capacity still there. I would also add that it is currently the recommendation to retain 9th district. So if we did have that exponential growth that I think we all hope and pray for, we would not be in a worse off position in the sense that we could reopen 9th district if we were to experience that. Retaining the building, some of the talk right now is around perhaps moving central office to there. So what would happen to central office? Well, Kenton County, for example, rents their central office from SD1. What about the alternative school if it were to move there? Well, we're currently renting the space of the alternative school, so we would not be in any different situation, I guess, than we are now. But if the reality is that we don't experience that exponential growth and we don't adjust in some way, as we're going to see here in a few minutes, the math stops working. It's also important to note that those are recommended capacities. As recently as 2016 and 2017, Glen Oaks Swing, for example, was at over 500. There was a time that Latonia Elementary had 700 students. So I guess where I'm going with all this is it is difficult to foresee a time in our near future that we would not have the capacity, even if we did consolidate to 4 elementary schools. We also know that City Heights is closing. We still have approximately 107 students there. We hope to retain every one of them, but if we don't, those numbers could be even more bleak than they're currently projected. Next slide, please. One of the things Mr. Simpson had requested at the last meeting was that we look at some of the demographic data. His first question was around the percent of economically disadvantaged. I stated at that time that all of our schools are at approximately 90%. So here's the exact numbers. You can see they're all within a few percent of that 90%, as I suggested. And then he rephrased to ask for percent students of color. So I pulled that data as well. As you can see, the highest is John G. Carlisle at nearly 80%, 6th District at 70%, 9th District at 67%. So I would say somewhere in the middle, Glen Oaks at 60, and Latonia at 41. Next slide. Actually, could we do these out of order? Could you go to the next one, Becky, please? And then we'll go back to that. So this is what we currently are districted at the 5 elementary schools. As you can see, I just want the board and public to be able to kind of see that there is some green to the north and bordering between John G. Carlisle's current territory and 6th District's current territory. City Heights is currently districted in part to 9th as well. So that gives you an idea of what the geographic locations look like right now.
I think it would help if you would, the colors, what school Because our public can't see that little graph thing down there.
Right.
Like,
I'm
red.
sorry, you want to, so
Yeah,
the
the red.
further south, so you can see where the river is identified north. The first purple is John G. Carlisle. And then on the left side, as you work your way, the west side, as you work your way to the west of Madison, coming south is Glen Oak Swing, except for that green splotch in the middle of Glen Oak Swing's current territory, which is City Heights, which rolls to 9th. On the east side then, on the northernmost east side, that territory is districted to 9th right now. As you flow south of that, that's 6th district in the blue, their territory until you reach the Licking to the east, 9th district, and then eventually Latonia's territory on the south. The green is 9th district's current territory, and the reddish brown to the further south is currently districted to Latonia Elementary. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Becky, if you could go back. The new proposal, if we were to consolidate the 4 elementary schools, and let me say this, while this map does currently show our recommendation of 9th being the closure, it is completely up to the board. If the board chose to consolidate and close a different elementary school, that is completely at your discretion. It would be rather easy to change this map. For example, while I don't think geographically it would make much sense to look at John G. Carlisle, because then you'd have students in West Covington have to travel great distances to get to an elementary. It is not burdensome for us to adjust the map if that's the will of this board. If you were to choose Latonia Elementary, for example, to close, nothing in the map would change. The purple would stay just the same as it is. The students would simply attend 9th. So I'm just throwing it out there. There are a variety of reasons, which I've already talked about, the landlocked status of 9th, the inability of the district to meet state safety recommendations for drop-off and pickup being separated from parents and buses, the desire that several board members have expressed to dream of someday maybe building a new elementary school where that footprint of our property at Latonia would allow for that. It certainly would at 9th. I could go on, but that's just one recommendation. It's completely up to the board where they go from there. Next slide, please. When we talk about the savings, this slide shows the immediate savings. I think it's important to remember too that no employee would lose their job through this process. We would assure that every teacher who wishes to stay in Covington schools, every custodian, every classified employee, every certified employee would still be with us. That said, these are the anticipated first year immediate savings. It's just under $1 million. This board has repeatedly expressed, as did the board prior to it, a desire to raise staff salaries to become more competitive. And so we're looking at operating efficiently. How do you do that, right? Not in a one-time grant, not in a fundraiser, something like that, that is a one-time hit to our budget, but in a sustainable way, because salaries, as you know, are a recurring expense. In fact, they keep going up with benefits, retirement pension, et cetera. So rather than trying to get a one-time hit, that's why we didn't look to do that with ESSER funds. That's why we didn't look to do that with ARP funds. It has to be a recurrent savings in order to assign it to a recurrent expense. This is one way, as you can see, that we could look at doing that in a time that inflationary costs are significant, to fund some of those raises that the board's expressed a desire to do. Next slide, please. There are also some other expenses that could result in some significant savings if they were eliminated. For example, we rent the parking lot at the back of this Board of Education. That's a recurring expense. We have had multiple folks drop by and ask if we would ever consider selling this building. The board could look to sell this building. And if we did that, we wouldn't need to rent those parking spaces. There would be utility savings from this building. There could be custodial savings from this building, et cetera. We also have the secondary support building. As many of you know, it's affectionately referred to as the Title I building. that sits in front of John G. Carlisle. We own some adjacent property there. I've had multiple folks stop by and ask if the board would ever consider selling that property as well. So there could be some one-time hits from those that could allow some other priorities that the board's expressed to be able to use for that money if they so chose. Again, your recurrent savings there would be utilities, maintenance, upkeep of that Title I building. Under the new plan, the vast majority of students would be within the 1 mile radius and not transported. If you look back to that, you don't have to go back to it, but look back to that slide. Right now, due to the way we're districted, we have some transportation expense. If you remember, there's some students being bused to 9th District, for example, from that green spatch that's up there. Perhaps at any rate, we anticipate this would result in not a lot, but some savings in transportation as well. That's fluid. Students move. There's a formula for that Katie gives us for who gets transported, who doesn't, essentially. So it would be hard to put an exact dollar figure on that, but we do anticipate there would be some savings. There's also going to be some costs if this occurs. Oh, I should also mention the children's home lease. We are good through next year there. The recommendation would not be to immediately move because we're signed and committed through a lease there. But we're about to enter into a period of renegotiating there at children's home. I anticipate increase in that number due to inflationary cost, perhaps significant. So I just want to put that out there as well. While we have greatly appreciated our partnership with Children's Home, and they continue to be a really, really fantastic partner. That's an alternative program of distinction recognized by KDE year after year after year. And a large part of that is our relationship with them, and I'm not downplaying that in any way. There are some fiscal realities that we're facing right now. So you would look at some renovation cost if the board offices were moved there, for example. There would be some cost associated with that. Some cost perhaps with if the alternative program were to be relocated to there as well. Though some advantages to that. There's a gym, there's a cafeteria, the rooms are already set up as classrooms. Could be minimal in those types of costs. More maybe than for the board and Title I offices that could be relocated there. There could be some hard costs there as well. So just want to be fully transparent. Talking about not only the savings, but some potential costs that could eat into those one-time savings amounts if you chose to go this route. Next slide. So this is a look at what a raise would look like of both 3%, 4%, and 5%. You could see that in the one-time recurrent savings, this would allow somewhere between that 3 and 4%, earmarked money of approximately $1 million that could be identified for raises if this is something that the board chose to do. Without doing that, it would be rather difficult at this time from what we projected to do that. So that's just trying to be transparent. I think that's about, next slide. I believe it was Mr. Gastrite a few meetings ago asked to look at what had been done off the last district facilities plan to both of the buildings. So this slide indicates what is in red, not yet completed. The window repair and replacement on 9th is substantial. Blessed that building has a lot of windows that are beautiful and allow for a lot of natural light. But as you know, commercial window replacement is expensive and those windows are in need. Full disclosure, if we retain that building, maybe something we have to look at anyway. But upgrade to the lower parking lot, seal and striping the lots. I'm not going to read them all to you, but there are some significant costs still on the table there in red that have not been completed to that building. If we don't, it is something we're going to have to consider in the next district facilities plan. Next slide. These are the things that have been done and not done at Latonia Elementary. One of the major upgrades there, an elevator was added to that building to make it more accessible to our students and staff that require use of that. But as you can see, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there as well. So we did pull those items off the district facility plan to provide that information at the board's request.
All right, Dr. Wilkerson.
Just want to introduce myself to folks who don't know me. I'm Janice Wilkerson. I'm assistant superintendent, sitting in.
I'm not sure.
I thought I did.
It's not.
I've been doing so well
Project
so
that.
far.
Project that voice, Dr. Wilkerson. Project that voice.
In any event, I do have a loud voice, so I will just speak loudly. I'm Janice Wilkerson. I'm sitting in for the superintendent tonight. And I want to thank Ken for being the spokesperson for this. He is the messenger. It is a discussion that we've had in cabinet. And that's a hard role to take. So I wanted to thank Ken for doing that. And questions that you have, I would be happy to share in answering those if at all possible. It is not an easy discussion ever. Several of us were here before when we had to close 2 of our schools. It is not an easy discussion. Passions can run very high, and that's understandable and that's okay. But I do want to thank Ken for carrying the water on this one for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkerson. I'll open it up for questions.
Um,
Mr. Gastrite.
Thank you. And I just wanted to commend Ken for the work he's put into this because, you know, this has come up and something that has been considered, and the board has had lots of questions. I think Ken has doggedly tracked down the information for us. So it's been really helpful, and I think his thoroughness is certainly appreciated. And, you know, for me, I believe that this is part of a bigger, I think, vision that we have for the district, in that we know that we have, we know that the city has certainly seen a lot of growth. And I think that, you know, there was a comment earlier looking at census data, and I don't know that we have the full picture of how that growth is impacting or could impact our schools looking out many years. So I know that this was a year that we were going to look at our district facilities. And as part of all the questions that have come out in this process, I know that we've suggested that we look and do kind of a master plan for our district that hopefully we'll be able to change how we approach these decisions from being, you know, slightly more reactive in that we've been looking at the enrollment going down, kind of agonizing over this potential decision for quite a while. And I think looking at our facilities in a kind of a zooming out and looking at them more broadly, we can come up with a plan that both accommodates, you know, worst case scenarios as well as scenarios that take into account the hopefulness of our growing city. I think hopefulness about a lot of the great fundamental work the district has been doing in getting our curriculum aligned across all of our district, and a lot of the work we've done on processes that's starting to be recognized by groups like Cognia and giving us very good marks for that. So these are things that are fundamental to what we do, and the districts, the facilities are a key enabling infrastructure for that. And so as we get all of the non-facility things aligned, it does feel like we need to step back and look more broadly at our facilities and what our plans are, so that we know we can say, hey, instead of saying we have to close a school because our enrollment dropped, we could say, hey, this is a 10-year plan about how we are going to best use our facilities, so that at the end of that, and I say 10, it might be 20, the end of that time, we have all of our facilities are upgraded that we need to have upgraded to a standard that's competitive with, I would say, our peers, our peer districts here. So for me, I do feel like the financial case is very strong for why we should consider consolidating these two school communities. It's strong for at least operating one less school, I would say. And, but I do feel like, at least for me, to decide tonight may be reactionary on the cusp of us having the information we need to be, I guess, more forward thinking and proactive about it. So I do have a couple questions. I know that was a little bit of a soapbox there, but because I think the key decision, if we as board members decide not to close the school, the key decision is where do we know that our budget is requiring these savings that we would see in this, and that if we don't close the school, we have to realize those savings in another way. And I think there are some obvious ways we could go about doing that. But none of them are as, I'd say, fiscally sound as the option of consolidating the school. So they would be, you know, and if Annette needs to cover her ears at this point, she can, Ms. Birchie, but, you know, digging into our contingency for whatever period of time we need in order to complete our district master plan and come up with a proactive plan on how we are going to best use our facilities. That would be one option. Another would be something that, you know, is kind of it's something that we don't want to say out loud, but it would be a tax increase. These are all things that we know are on the table. They're all hard decisions. I recognize that the cabinet, knowing how hard the raising taxes is, and knowing that we don't want to lower our contingency because that puts us in slightly less good financial position, have made this recommendation, and I respect that. I think the great thing about having so much of the community show up and the position we are in as board members, that we are the place where the community has to touch the district. And that's why ultimately it is, as Ken said, our decision on how to do this. So I think it's great that the community came out. And I think that it is our responsibility to, and I think, you know, Mr. Simpson and Mr. Haggard have said this more eloquently than I have, but you know, education isn't always a business. Sometimes it's about doing the right thing for the community. And so I think that those are the things that I'm taking into account, you know, when I consider this proposal, which again has been brought with all the best intentions and very, very finely presented. So I know I said I had a question.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I guess the question I was going to ask was, if we accept this proposal, where do we think, would there be a recommendation from the district of what the impact to our budget would be, how we would close that shortfall?
I'm not able to answer that at this time.
Any other questions?
No further questions.
All right, Ms. Edlin.
I have one. At our last meeting, you mentioned maintaining the integrity of classroom sizes as well as job positions for those staff affected. Could you expand more on this tonight for the public?
Sure. So KDE has class sizes maximums that are set at our elementary schools. Many rooms in the district are at or near there, and we do not anticipate any changes. We would not be certainly going over those KDE recommended sizes. In fact, if this doesn't occur, We may be looking at some things we don't recommend from an academic standpoint, like having to consolidate classes or grade, or even potentially grades. So, or grade levels, because of how low population could be at some schools. So we will, of course, do that and make that work if it's what we have to do. We don't have any choice, and this isn't accepted. But it could result in some very difficult decisions moving forward, as we just don't have the students to efficiently run.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Simpson, any questions, thoughts?
Just some thoughts. Thank you for doing all of the due diligence especially that I asked for. I think this is one way of being on the path of being, like Mr. Gastright said, a little bit more proactive to fixing the things that we see as a problem. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not an educator. I never claimed to be an educator. I do know community, and I know the ill effects of closing a school in a community that is that has a lot of students that are living in housing projects. So right now we're busing kids from City Heights past one of the best schools in our region to 9th District. I take my niece a couple days a week from City Heights, drive past Glen Swing to 9th District. I wasn't here with that decision. I'm sure there was a very, very reasonable decision. It might have been the process might have gone very similar to what it's going through right now. With that being said, listening to everyone and all of the contingency that we have and the resources that we have as a school district, this decision is a very corporate way to fix a problem that's not always corporate facing. Like what has been mentioned today, that education isn't always about being fiscally sound. It is a huge part. We want to make sure that we have money. If we were a struggling school district, it might be something different. So I'm not, and I'm looking at you while I'm saying that, but I'm actually speaking to everyone. It's not, this isn't directed to you, and you said it very eloquently that you're just the messenger. And I'm a community person. I've been doing business planning for close to 2 decades, so I understand all of it. And so with all of that being said, there are the items that were presented to close, and the resources that we have. I think there are additional things that need to be considered: community engagement, stakeholder involvement. I'll just leave it there about some of those things that should have been presented here, that should have all been done for me to be comfortable to be one of those people to say close the school down. And again, this is not directed at you. This is directed at I was going to quote a very funny movie quote, but I'm not going to. I'm not directing this at you. I'm directing this at the situation. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mrs. Huff.
Okay. Where to begin? First, I spoke with Mr. Garrison last night at great length about this. I have been here as a seasoned board member. I'm in my 23rd year, and I have closed 2 schools, and the communities around those schools have done just fine. Is it sad to close a school? Yes, it is. For those families to adjust their life to go somewhere else that isn't their home school. But they adjusted because our communities are resilient. Our people in our communities are resilient. But what bothers me about this is that At this point of this, we shouldn't be making the decision because we haven't heard from our stakeholders. So what should have been done is for this to be put on as a vote to come to consensus that our district leaders and for us to hold meetings with our stakeholders and our community and our businesses to get their 2 cents for them to really understand the impact is what really should have been done. That way the community that's out there, not sitting here, will understand the financial impact, which in my mind, we do need to run this as a business. Our job is to help control the budget, and that's part of it. So that would be my recommendation, is that we just come to consensus to let the administration set up meetings for our stakeholders to listen to the broad community. I also am a woman that looks at my glass as half full instead of half empty. And this is what we would gain if we did close the school, is that all of our staff would still have a job. All of our students would still have a warm, welcoming community school that they would be going to. Class sizes would not increase because there is space in all of our buildings. And whether we do this year or whether we do it next year or possibly in 10 years, the truth of the matter of fact, we got the consensus tonight, 4,976 students. Our projection is that next year we will have 3,105. That's 1,871 students that for whatever reason are choosing to go to other schools. That's what we really should be working at. But if we do close the school, I just want us all to think about our glass being half full instead of half empty, and what we're taking away, no matter which school that we close. To me, if we close any, 9th would be the more reasonable one, only because of all the needs that that building has and that it's landlocked and there's not really room for growth. So that's all I have to say.
Well, I will say that I will now view my glass as half full because Mrs. Huff and I are agreeing on issues that we need to be looking. Why are we not capturing these 1,800 and so students that live in our city? Obviously, that's a drumbeat I've been beating for quite a while. I do have a couple of questions. So, Mr. Kipruk, could you explain a little bit more what it means by KDE recommended capacity?
So it is based in part on square footage, a walkthrough by KDE state facility staff. They look at how rooms are set. They look at, how much is cafeteria, how much is hallway, etc. And then they have a recommended capacity that they release to us.
So it's from an education perspective, not just like a fire marshal. Here's how many
Correct.
people you can fit in a room.
Correct. Right. Okay. And that is their recommended capacity for educational purposes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then, so one of my questions is, so what about, because I think all the focus here has been, the recommendation to close 9th. But the way I look at this map and then the previous map, it looks like there are some other district boundary changes for elementary schools that could affect, like 6th district would be gaining some students in there. It looks like Glen Wing might be losing some territory in there. So what would we do for those families? So say, for instance, those students who are currently districted to Glen Wing, but they become undistricted, would we allow them to stay in their home school, or how would we handle that?
So capacity allowing, yes. If they have students that are currently attending Glen and their street were to move to perhaps John G. in the extreme north side, is I think probably most of what we're talking about. Yeah. And they're in 3rd grade at Glen Swing, a parent could request an in-district transfer, for example, and they would be given priority, given that they're already there. And that's how we've done that in the past when we've had to close other schools.
Okay. And then I get the other thing with the proposal that you came up with, not you, that the cabinet came up with, so like where the boundaries are, right? Was it just to get to as even as a number as possible, or kind of what else went into that?
So you look at you do look at trying to balance numerically, right? But you also look at number within a mile, for example, which is the KD recommended transportation guideline, and that factors in as well. You think about things like trying to minimize to the extent possible crossing of railroad tracks in the busiest roads. So that all goes into account. It's never perfect how we would love it to be, but we do the best job we can in looking at those boundaries, and we work with planning, Kenton County Planning and Zoning as we do those, and they pick the colors, for example, that are hard to reach, right?
And another question I had, so I know obviously school safety is becoming a big issue, right? We're getting lots of directives from Frankfurt around school safety. Do you anticipate a situation in the future, especially at Latonia, where we're going to have to make some major renovations at Latonia to be in compliance with school safety marshal?
It's possible. I think it's likely to be grandfathered, given that there are several schools in the state that were built in that era that are kind of set up like that. So I think it's likely to be grandfathered. Won't be best practice.
Right.
And would we want to look at doing some renovation there to make classroom walls, for example? But we are in complete compliance. One of the things the state security marshal assigned to our territory recommended, if you remember this, the last board approved some security upgrades, particularly to the top floor there. So we have made strides. Of course, we've redone the entryway there. But there could be some expense there as well to do exactly what you're talking about with classrooms.
And I guess could you give me? We may have talked about it, I just don't remember. Kind of, maybe the cabinet talked about this, maybe not. Just the why the recommendation to have the Latonia Terrace community attend Glennis Wing and not Latonia Elementary.
Part of that is the continuous mass, right? It's I think it's a numbers issue as well. Trying to keep the students closest geographically to Latonia. That drive's actually similar. It doesn't really look like it, but when you look at it through tenths of miles, right, it's not much different. Okay. So.
Okay. And I echo a lot of what has been said here. We know this is not an easy topic to discuss or a decision to make. I think we all do appreciate the work that's been done by the cabinet to come up with a recommendation from the board. I think the issue that I still have, and I would agree with Mrs. Huff, is that we need to include more stakeholders in that conversation when we're having it. I understand it was presented to us earlier with the rationale, we don't want to cause panic by saying, we're going to have a conversation about closing the school, but we can't make these decisions without having all the stakeholders at the table. I am a big believer in the more voices you have at a table, the better your decisions are going to be. And so I do agree that, we need to get to a space where we are involving all of those stakeholders. I would be in agreement with what Mr. Gastrite's been saying around the need for a true master plan, so that we are making decisions that are what is the highest and best use of all of our facilities, rather than having to just kind of make a reactive decision to what we see as declining enrollment. But this is on the agenda as an informational item on purpose, so we could have this discussion and determine what appropriate next steps would be. But I know Ms. Edlin, did you have another question?
I believe you answered it in one of your questions. Thank you.
Okay.
I do. Oh,
Mrs.
actually, I do have a question.
Okay.
I hate to even bring this up, but in the world of COVID, when we did have to do distance within the schools, God forbid anything like that ever happen again, but would we have capacity within this projection to ensure that our students were safe in the event that something like that were to take place?
So I would think that we would be similar to most other schools in the state that are closer to their capacity. Obviously, if there's more students, we're not quite as well off as we were. But I think 88%, which is our current projection, would still allow us to do some distancing should that arise again.
Okay. And I just want to say that I echo the sentiment that more stakeholders should be included in the conversation. I would be eager to hear from teachers and students. So thank you for all
Mrs.
your
Huff.
helpfulness on this.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Huff.
Since we had to redistrict before because KDE came in to give an audit. And the reason why we had to do it is because our schools were not, and correct me if I'm wrong, were not racially balanced. Do you remember us doing that?
I think you're referring to under Mr. Moreland's tenure when there was a district, there was an audit by the Kentucky Department of Education, and one of their recommendations was to change the Latonia school population a bit more to make them more racially balanced as our other schools. So part of that decision then was, and Mr. Grine, help me if I'm getting it wrong, part of the decision then, and this is some nearly 20 years ago, was to divide the community of City Heights so that half of the students, if you lived on this side of the street in City Heights, you went to Latonia Elementary. If you lived on this side of the street in City Heights, you went to 9th District Elementary in an effort to better racially balance our schools.
And because you said that about your niece, that triggered up here that I remember us doing that. But I'm also, one of your followers had mentioned our kids are crossing our main through Madison Avenue, DeCourcy, without safety nets up there by like McDonald's and things like that. And if we have to do this, or even if we don't do this, I think our leadership really needs to think about the safety of all of our students getting to school, especially if they're crossing those busy highways. That's all I have, Mr. Hacker. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, thoughts? Okay. I think this was a good discussion. It was a good discussion for the public to have. I think we'll take this feedback and we'll have a recommendation for the next board meeting after we discuss it with Mr. Garrison. So
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Next on our agenda, we have the consent agenda. Would anyone like anything pulled from the consent agenda? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
So, Becky, we call the roll, please.
Ms. Huff,
Yes.
Mr. Gastrite,
Yes.
Ms. Edelin,
Yes.
Mr. Simpson,
Yes.
Mr. Haggard.
Yes. Next on the individual approval items, we do have the comprehensive district improvement plan. Mr. Alter is here. Once again, he's knocking down barriers to get here. So thank you for your persistence to get up to the podium. I know that there's still some questions about the comprehensive district improvement plan. I do just want to make sure I am right on this, Mr. Alter. We are in compliance with KDE on our CDIP.
Yes.
They have it. They're like, thank you.
Yes.
This is more local board policy for us to actually approve the
Correct.
CDIP, correct? Okay.
Yep.
I'll hand this off to Ms. Edelin.
Well, I just wanted to inform the board. I took some notes so that I could be very intentional with my words because I did have a meeting with Mr. Alter, Mr. Garrison, and Mr. Grine regarding concerns I'd had with CDIP or the Comprehensive District Improvement Plan. My primary concerns were related to curriculum strategies, teacher autonomy, assessment fatigue, students, and teacher burnout. From my experience as an educator, as well as hearing the concerns of other educators, I wanted to ensure that our plan took consideration
for the balance of educators and our students. And Mr. Alter and Mr. Run, feel free to chime in if there's anything that I miss in here. But I just wanted to make sure that I was transparent with the conversation that we had so that you all are informed as well. Mr. Alter shared that there is flexibility within the various strategies, the primary instructional method of explicit direct instruction or EDI, and that principals can work with their educators at their discretion to meet their needs within their buildings. With schools being in particular statuses such as CSI, our district was encouraged to adopt a district-wide curriculum. Prior to this establishment, there had been a more purchased curriculum or a curriculum that was more guided, if I'm correct, for educators. But the direction was to include more teachers, and that began the process of developing a district-wide curriculum, also with a recommendation from KDE. Mr. Alter shared that there was some disconnect with the district offices to schools in the flexibility of the curriculum and how we should be working to also meet the varied needs of our teachers. But he very positively affirmed that they are working on that communication and are eager to help in any way. With regard to assessments, we talked about how the district is being more intentional about assessments and ensuring that data captured is the data that's driving decisions with curriculum and for our students. We also talked about how the district is aware of assessment fatigue and that some principals opt for more testing within their schools than maybe others do, and that's ultimately up to them. There are some required assessments, but other benchmark assessments are up to the discretion of principals with input from teachers and how they conduct to use those. I asked if there were other opportunities to capture qualities that we envision, kind of like in the portrait of a graduate work. And I know Mr. Gashrite, we talked about this at a previous meeting about capturing the amazing things that our students are doing outside of standardized assessments. And Mr. Alter talked about how he encourages teachers to be creative in how they assess. And I thought that was very positive. And I want to thank Mr. Alter, Mr. Garrison, and Mr. Grind for sharing their expertise with me. They spent over an hour on the phone with me and answered my many questions, and I really appreciate that. It's a learning opportunity for me. Hour and a half? I thought we were right over an hour. Well,
It was a good conversation.
it was great. You know, bunch of passionate people in a room. I love it. And my recommendation for the plan would be to have an additional goal that specifically focused on teacher retention and wellness, like we've heard tonight from principals within one of our schools. There's a lot of great things going on, and I would love to see those things named in a document so that we can certainly hold our district accountable to making those efforts for our teachers and their well-being. And that was my recommendation for the plan. I know we talked about this being a living document, that this didn't necessarily have to be added today. But, you know, my concern was this plan is going to be aligned with our strategic plan. And I know that we as a board have a priority for teacher well-being. And I felt that this was necessary to also be added to this plan. It may be a little unconventional, but we've heard tonight as well that we've got shortages, and part of that is making sure that our educators are well and that we are listening to them. And I feel that the district is doing a lot of new things to listen to our teachers, and I really appreciate the efforts on your all's behalf to encourage that. So that's a little overview. Not quite the hour and a half, but that was the Spark Notes, okay?
I like that. So just real quick in response, there's a section because I did reflect, and I think the out of our conversation, the biggest thing I took away from it was teachers looking at this document as it is make sure it focuses on our teachers also. So there's a section in the CDIP, it's called the Quality of School Climate and Safety. It's section 5, and I plan on working something into that. I try to stay in the regulation of the state with the CDIP,
Okay.
but with adding a whole complete section. But I can integrate things throughout the CDIP and work with that. I just want to share around teacher wellness and well-being, things like that. As at the district level, there's a saying, and I learned it from a leadership video or whatever, that we're responsible for the people that are responsible for the people. So what I mean by that is, I see myself as ultimately responsible for the whole district, but responsible to train principals. Principals are responsible for the teachers because they have that direct line. Teachers are ultimately the closest to the students. You know, they have the highest effect on the students. So one of the things, with that said, one of the things we started to do, what we can do is we train, Dr. Wilkerson's team for the past year or so has been training principals and psychologists and counselors that come to our leadership around teacher well-being and how to make that happen in your school. Because I can't make that happen. Does that make sense? Like, I can't make that happen. You saw a really good example tonight of a principal, Miss Bell, that has taken those ideas. Not that her school has been, strong in that area, I believe. And, but so she's taken what she's learned from that and taking that down to the school level, right? So I can't do that, but the principals can, because they deal with the people at the school and the teachers, definitely. So I think it's our job to make sure that we make sure our principals are knowledgeable enough to, have that in place in their schools. And we work at leadership every month. Dr. Wilkerson has training, and we're focusing on well-being and social emotional learning, and especially because when we've surveyed our teachers, that's what they're asking for. Now, yeah, so that's, if that makes sense, I just wanted to share that. We don't directly go to the teachers with it. We train the principals, who then go back into the schools and work on that. One of the things I wanted to share was, I forget where I read this, but the number one thing that teachers need while they're in a position in school is their expectations. Number one, if you're in a job and you don't know what your expectations are, it's very frustrating. If you don't have a curriculum, if you're not given resources, if you go in the first day of school, you're a new teacher and you don't know what you're doing. So from the district level, I feel it's our responsibility to provide our schools with a curriculum, which we've done, provide them with resources, provide them with, we have protocols at the district level that schools take and make their own. So it's our job to make sure the expectations are clear for our schools. And that's how I think we help with teacher retention when a school has, like what Ms. Bell was talking about with teacher wellness, addressing that. Hawaiian parties are great. They're great. But it's really about what she said, like they take time to talk to teachers. They take time to close their door and hear about their lives and things like that. That is what's important. Plus, Ms. Bell has expectations in place in her school. So all that is how you keep your teachers. I go on and on, but I'm not going to. You know what number 2 is for teachers? Copiers that work. I'm not kidding. And guess who's technology right here? Anyways, so I am reflecting on our discussion.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate it. I always, I'm a big believer in certainly having high expectations, but how are we ensuring that we are also being mindful of the challenges that are new, especially with COVID and inflation and the many challenges that teachers face, and navigating those expectations, but also realizing that they're human, and providing them grace. And I just thought that there was power in naming that in this document. And I really appreciate the conversation and your comments. And copiers are for sure very important. So.
Any other questions or comments from Mr. Alter? What I like about this conversation, it seems like you said, this is a living document that we can kind of reflect and bring back. So I would rather not reject a document that's living in a vote when we know like there's conversation here to kind of make it better. So I think
I'm going to add one more
sure.
thing for you.
Go ahead.
The document especially is going to be fluid and be working with our strategic plan. One of the next steps with the strategic plan is to do, cross it with the equity plan and the strategic plan, and with the CDIP. And, things may change because, we have our strategic plan has very high expectations and hopes for our students in our district. And we have to make sure we aim that way with everything that we do. So it's going to change constantly. That's okay. So I can keep it updated.
Well, and then my question then to you, so if you do change it every month, let's just say you don't bring it back to us every month to approve, right?
No.
I would I think that would be silly.
No, but
Okay.
during the strategic plan process, when
Sure.
we go through it, I'll definitely, when it's like, okay, we're good for this year, whatever, which,
Well, one of the things I appreciate what Ms. Elam brought up was, I feel like we all do we've talked about, the plans and the plans and the plans, like getting everything under one strategic plan. So I do feel like it's important that the CDIP does reflect, what we are endorsing and approving in the CDIP is then lifted up and then reflected into the strategic plan. So I think that's the really important piece here. So I think, if there is a bit more refinement that can be done to include these things around teacher wellness, I think that's all the better, and we can bring this back when we're all ready to approve.
So are we entertaining?
I would ask that we do not entertain a motion for approval tonight.
Well, and I like what was said earlier, thinking about everyone as an educator. So when I'm talking about wellness, I certainly don't want to exclude district office or even our principals or other staff. So thinking about it more broadly in that sense too, the wellness of all of our folks.
and when it comes to that too, like I said, my side is kind of like the expectations, the academics, and Dr. Wilkerson has provided, and I can't really speak to it like she would, but the wellness or the St. Elizabeth with our teachers. You want to talk about that real quick? So
Sure. In addition to what we're doing at our district leadership team meetings and talking with principals about wellness and looking at the bigger picture. A lot of times we think that the candy bar in the mailbox we know that's not the fix. It's nice to have, but it's a combination of knowing what's expected, as Mr. Alter said, of knowing that the copier works, of knowing how to get your questions answered. So it's building those systems that we're in the process of doing. And it's also that very slippery slope of what is work-life balance? What does that look like? And that's all of the things that we are talking with principals about and working to help them have conversations with their teams and understand that going forward. The other piece is we did add an employee assistance program this year that all of our staff members are able to access through St. Elizabeth. It's a partnership with St. Elizabeth. So at no charge, any staff member or any member of their family can access counseling sessions for whatever it's related to. If it's related to stress, if it's related to any personal or family issue they may have. So this is our first year with that. People have responded very positively. We get a numbers report. We don't get, of course, identifying information or any of those kinds of things. It's also a resource that if a principal sees that a staff member is especially stressed or comes and shares with them a concern, that's something they can certainly recommend. So we're very excited to have that. It's something we had many years ago. We're very happy to that Ken Kippenbrock again did the research on that to bring back to our staff members.
thank you. And another thing to think about too with our plans and how we deal with some of our schools, there's some of our schools are in state assistance, and we don't want them to go to taken over by the state. So yes, there's going to be most of the time they're in state assistance because the principals need more guidance. They need more, people would call it micromanaging, but it's more on-site, more hands-on, more helping make decisions, more sometimes telling you how to do it, you know? So, but and that's, I think that's what it takes sometimes, because they're in state assistance for a reason. Assistants need more help. So, and when auditors come in, they look at, does the district have the capacity to lead? I don't want to be told I don't have the capacity to lead. And I think principals do not want to be told they do not have the capacity to lead. So the urgency rises, you know? So I just want to say that there's all kinds of different levels with what's in the CDIP and things, but I'll be quiet and let you finish this.
Yeah.
Well, and something that we talked a little bit about, state assistance, and I know that I mentioned that teachers are our greatest resource, and my main concern with the work-life balance was, I do believe that we as a district, we train teachers to the very best, but how do we retain them so that we can continue to have those talents? It's hard to improve, especially within those statuses, if you have constant teacher turnover. So finding that balance even within the status that exists. And I think, I definitely think you're in line with helping find that balance.
Mrs. Huff?
Thank you.
We have to approve this. It's already gone to KDE.
Yes, it's gone to KDE. We're all they say good to go. This is a local policy that says we have to approve it. There's no deadline for us to approve it. So I think this continuing conversation is good to get it to a place where, the entire board is like, yes, this is an awesome CDIP.
It's a fluid document.
Mhm.
And it's part of our job to go ahead and move this forward. And if we have to come back and approve it, and if we have to come back to it, that would be you and Mr. Garrison to make that decision. But it does need to be ratified, is the right word, I guess, that we understand what's in the CDIP. We understand that it's a fluid document. And with this and the strategic plan and the equitable plan that we've got going, all of the concerns that this board has will be covered. So I'm proposing to move forward.
You can make the motion, Mrs. Huff, if you'd like.
Okay, I make the motion to approve the comprehensive district improvement plan.
A second.
Becky, call the roll.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Mr. Gastrite?
Yes.
Mrs. Edlin?
I would personally like to see the additional improvement, so I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Haggard?
I'm going to vote no. Thought we had some good discussion. I hope we can keep that discussion going as we should have been doing. Thank you,
And
Mr. Alter.
I'd look forward to your guidance on next steps for that. So.
We do not have an addendum agenda tonight. Do we have a report of the attorney?
Briefly. So I feel like part of our job as board attorney is to keep the board advised of just ongoing things that are happening as it relates to education and things that might impact the district. The legislative season is in full swing down in Frankfurt. And just this week, there's been some pretty hefty conversations as it surrounds teacher retention, in fact, and the vacancies statewide. And there was a lot of committee conversation regarding the emergency certification, which right now is at 2 years. But just this week, the committee approved to move it along, to put it on the floor, to extend it to 4 years, which there's some theories behind that, how that could be benefit some of the vacancies and shortages. So obviously, part of our job is to keep you guys up to date on that kind of stuff, and we will. But I also think it's good information to share with the public and the board as a whole.
Thank you. Is there further discussion and or announcements by the board? I know Mr. Gastrite has one, so I'll call on him first.
Thank you, Mr. Haggard. So I know that, I feel like there's like the endorphins in my brain tingle every time I hear the word strategic plan. So, I know that it's been presented in a draft format. And so, and the expectation, or I guess the hope is that we would have it approved to be used in the next school year. And just thinking about, that plan has to then be operationalized through procedures. So I know that we've all had it. We've had an opportunity to review it and provide comment. I would just like to encourage maybe a schedule to be developed so that we can see how we would move that along to make sure that we have it operational by the next school year.
I know, I feel like the last time we talked about the strategic plan, I know that the superintendent wanted a little bit of grace and time because we were also doing the diagnostic review. So there was a lot of things kind of happening at the same time. So I will touch base with Mr. Garrison and see what kind of schedule we can work out for more updates on the strategic plan. So, all right, there are some items in your red folders tonight. I'm sorry, was there any other announcements? My apologies. Mr. Simpson.
I don't know if this is more of an announcement, but there was kind of a little bit of discrepancy of like some of the information that we got presented tonight and the information that was in the packet and the information that was online for what was going on. And just so specifically about the consolidation. There was no information online about the consolidation, and we got a small picture in our packets about the consolidation. But we've got a really great information tonight regarding that. So if there's a way that we can make sure that we have all the information presented to us in a timely manner online in the booklet, so that the public could also be aware.
Okay. I will also bring that up with the superintendent. All right. Anything else? All right. There are some items in your red folder. Event link. I think this is, you can download that to get complete athletic schedules. We have another event in our equity speaker series, and I believe Becky has some information in your red folders about the COSBA National Conference coming up at the end of March. Some upcoming events. We are celebrating the 100th day of school this week. Very exciting. And have some other events I would call out. I think many of us have received some emails, perhaps from some schools, about Read Across America Week coming up at the end of February, beginning of March. I think some schools are looking for some celebrity readers. So if board members are available to lend some of their time to do that, please do. All right. Next item on the agenda, I am going to make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to KRS 61810 subsection F. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. You call the roll, please.
Mr. Haggard.
Yes.
Ms. Evelyn.
Yes.
Mr. Gastrite.
Yes.
Ms. Huff. No. Mr. Simpson.
Yes.
Well, thank you, everyone. We are going to go in executive session. There may be action after the meeting, but I would thank you for being here. We do appreciate you coming out to join us. Awesome. All right. Thank you. We have come out of executive session. We are not going to take any action tonight. So with that, I'm going to ask for consensus to adjourn.
Consensus granted.